With us in the studio today is Tetiana Yevloieva with the Religious Administration of Muslims of Ukraine, Ummah. She's here to talk about some of her own work and some of the issues facing the Muslim community in Ukraine more broadly. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so right now it's, of course, Ramadan Kareem. So what are some of the activities that are happening for this month? Is there something happening for Eid, etc.?
We have general activities that are happening during all the month of Ramadan. These are specific activities like feeding people who are fasting, feeding the poor, providing them with grocery baskets containing all the basic food they need for the whole month. So the poor people wouldn't have to think if they have food on their table when they have to break the fast. And we also conduct some charity events like helping the orphans. As far as I recall, recently in Vinnytsia, for example, our folks bought sportwear for the local orphans, and they were just wearing it and being happy. Right yesterday, they posted pictures and said thank you. We try to raise funds for the orphan children who have disabilities because they need special treatment, and children who have parents, their parents are responsible for raising funds for such treatment, but they do not have parents. And so we take care of some of such children and raise funds for their rehabilitation, because if they do not receive rehabilitation, there's no hope for them to live a more or less normal life in the future. So we're doing hard to raise funds for them. And of course, we're trying to feed the hungry, help the poor, and even non-Muslims, like, for instance, our recent participation in Christian charity, Feeding the Poor on Maidan. We've already participated twice in this charity. We donated food, so they cooked it and they gave it away on Maidan Nezalezhnosti to the poor and needy people. And I think it's a wonderful initiative. So we're trying to gain as much reward from God as possible and do as much good deeds as possible.
That's wonderful. How about like anything for the end? Is there like some large celebration at the end with Eid or with Laylat al-Qadr? Like, is there any specific activities for those?
Of course. When we have Eid, it's a great festival. It's one of the two great religious festivals in a year. So, of course, we are waiting for this day, and not only adults, but the children are waiting for it as well. So, in order to make it bright and happy for the children, we always make some activities so they would feel that it's a really holiday, a festival for them, like playgrounds, bounty castles, sweets, different quests. They can go and win prizes, or just take the winner's certificate, and they are very happy. They really enjoy doing this. And for instance, we are trying to get them involved in the spirit of Ramadan during the holy month. For instance, in Kharkiv, there has been the first stage of the great quest for the children. They were pirates. They were running around the Islamic Center, collecting the parts of the treasure map. So now that they have the treasure map, the second stage will be searching for the treasure itself. So because our children, they see how other kids like dress up for Halloween or for Christmas or whatever, and they want to have such an occasion too, to dress up, to have fun, and we are trying to provide them with such an occasion. And of course, on the Eid day, we are trying to make a festive program. We are trying to have a present for each child who came to the prayer along with their parents, and we provide them sweets, toys, and etc., and some prizes they can win in the contest.
And outside of Ramadan, that's probably where a lot of the activity happens, because it's such a very communal thing. But more generally, how active is the Muslim community in Kyiv and Ukraine more broadly?
Well, we are trying to be as active as possible as our resources give us the opportunity to be, because like there are plenty of good projects, but it will involve like plenty of money, and we cannot afford it, unfortunately. But as long as we can afford it, with our money, with our efforts, with our some things we own and we can donate or share with the others, we try to get involved in our own activities, both in our own activities and in activities initiated by other social groups and other religious groups. So there's no problem in cooperating with Christians, Jews, Buddhists, whatever, because we believe that it's our common good. For the benefit, we're acting for the benefit of the whole society, and as a part of the society, we will be better, we will be safer, we will be happier when this society feels safe, when this society is okay, when this society is prospering. So if we want a healthy and prosperous society, we have to make our input in it. So that's why we are proactive, and we're trying to participate in such events during all year long, not only during Ramadan. As for the orphans, we take care of about 2,000 orphan children. We help their guardians, raise them with some money, with some school supplies, with some clothes. We help the internally displaced persons, because many of them are Muslims, because the most...
So are many of the orphans internally displaced? Or just more generally in the community?
No, in general, internally displaced persons, because the regions that are now under occupations, these are basically the regions where most of Ukrainian Muslim community lives compactly. So there are compact settlements of Muslims. It's Crimea and it's Donbass. These two regions were traditional habitat for Ukrainian Muslims because of the historical reasons and of the internal migration reasons. And now both of those regions are occupied, and there are many Muslim internally displaced persons that had to leave their homes and search shelter somewhere else. And we, as their brothers and sisters in faith, we of course are trying to help them as much as they can, but the problem is that they are majority and we are minority on the rest of the territory of Ukraine. So we have now a curious situation when the minority of Muslims helping the majority of Muslims, trying to help the majority of Muslims.
A lot of people know about the Crimean Tatar population from Crimea, but what about Donbass? What's the Muslim population like there?
It's mostly the largest ethnic group there is Volga Tatars, originating from Russia, but they started migrating to that territory somewhere in the early 19th century. So it's been a home for them for many generations, and they have no other home, so they consider themselves as Ukrainian Tatars. And there is a variety of ethnic groups, like of former Soviet Union, mostly of former Soviet Union, like people from Central Asia, from Caucasus, from Northern Caucasus, and Crimean Tatars. Some are for the Crimean Tatars because when they returned from deportation, they didn't allow them to return to Crimea, so some of them settled in Donbass on their way to Crimea. They had to settle there, and after the Crimea was available for them at last, some of them stayed there, so Crimean Tatar villages can be found in Donbass as well. And there are recently, over the past like 20 or something years, there have been some Arab population, because people came to study here in Ukraine, they got married, they stayed here, and so they have also their ethnic community here in Ukraine, and the Arabs are concentrated in large cities, and Donetsk was one of them. Donetsk universities were one of the most popular universities to go and have an education, so of course some Arabs stayed in Donetsk as well.
You were mentioning some of your interfaith work that you were doing, working with Christians, Jews, Buddhists, etc. So what more can you tell me about some of the activities that happen in that context? I know there's a few interfaith congresses and things in Ukraine, for example.
Yes, but cooperation does not only mean like congresses, conferences, seminars on interfaith dialogue, although there's plenty of it. But cooperation means that we get along in different projects that we all that benefit the values we all share. So we all believe that, for instance, we have to pay more attention to families, to family matters, to family values, and we have to promote them, and we have to promote that the children would have parents, that the children would not be left in orphanages, that the children would be taken care of and not abandoned. And we promote we promote it among our believers, and we promote it among the society jointly with other religious communities, because this is what unites us. This is what belongs to our common values. For instance, charity work. We also get actively involved in the projects that benefits for charity, with helping disabled children, for instance. This project originated from cooperation with Christians. They were attending several orphanages where disabled children are taken care of, and just Muslims just joined this project, and now we have several children under our own guardianship. So we started with joining somebody else's project and then made our own. This occurs as well to internally displaced persons. First we participated in other people's initiatives, like providing clothes, household supplies, and etc., etc., etc. for internally displaced persons, regardless their religions, because it's our common tragedy. We all share this tragedy, what happened in the southwest Ukraine, and we have to help each other because we are human beings, and God teaches us that we have to help each other and be kind to each other. And there were many projects in Crimea. Unfortunately, they were frozen when Crimea was occupied. For instance, Crimean Tatars, when they returned to Crimea, they didn't have national schools. So they didn't have any means to school their children, and the local administration provided them with buildings that were like dangerous to stay in because they were old. They haven't been renovated for decades. And so we reconstructed, as far as I remember, 19 schools. So we made them completely new, completely equipped, and so those children could get an education in Crimean Tatar classes. And also many villages, Crimean Tatar villages, were founded in the steppe where there were no wells, there was no supplies, natural supplies of drinking water. So we dug the wells, we provided them with sewing machines so they could earn their living. We provided them with cows for the poor families, with only one condition: when this cow gives birth to a future cow. Female calf. They have to donate it to some other poor family. So they will, pass it along, so pass it further. And there are many of such projects, and we're trying to help the poor people who have school children in their families with school supplies, because we know it takes a lot of money to send children to school nowadays, and so on and so forth. So there are plenty of projects we're trying to be involved in.
So has the situation with the IDPs improved significantly since the beginning of the war, or is it still fairly dire?
There is only one improvement, I suppose. I think the volunteers dealing only with IDPs will explain you better, but as far as I know, there is only one improvement, that there are less new IDPs coming, because the first wave was huge. It was very, very huge, and we ended up with million or something people all coming at the same time to large cities in our regions of Ukraine, and all having the same needs plus minus. So it was a great workload, and the whole society consolidated to help those people, because like no single social group could do that all alone. And now there are less people coming because most of those who wanted to leave, they already left, and some of them even found a new accommodation, new job, whatever. And some of them returned home because they couldn't find accommodation and job, and not because it became safe at home. No, they were forced to leave because they couldn't build a new life here, and they couldn't always exist on volunteer donations, so they had to return home, unfortunately. And people who decided to stay here for any reason, for like they have disabled parents that cannot be moved through the borderline, they have some obligations that have to be fulfilled for any reasons. They are staying there, and now people are moving only when the battles intensify and military actions intensify, and people from the border villages and settlements, they are trying to get away. So that's the only, I think, problem that diminished since then, but
bad but stable.
They still have, even those who have accommodation, even those who have jobs, they still have plenty of problems. One of my colleagues is an internally displaced person, and I can hear all those things firsthand when they have to, the government authorities, they say that we will check you within 2 weeks. You have to stay at home. And if you are really living here in Kyiv, or maybe you just came here from the place of your permanent residence and you're living in those terrorist republics. So she said, okay, but last time you came, it was when I left to get some bread. We cannot stay incarcerated in the home, in our house, waiting for you to come. We are people, we have to go to the store, we have to go to work, we have to everything. Maybe you can give us more concrete details. And they said, no, this must be a surprise visit because we have to check if you really live there. So it's a bit obscene. And there are, they have a lot of problems with the documents. They have a lot of problems with social payments. I don't think their situation improved really well.
Fortunate, but could you tell some of our viewers where they can go if they would like to help in some of these actions that you're taking in order to help the IDPs and orphans?
We are always open for a cooperation, so if you want to join, please come to any Islamic cultural centers Al-Raid. You can Google search it online, and please come, please join. There are many non-Muslims joining our charities. For instance, we have a blood donation charity, and about half of participants now are non-Muslims. Although when we started, there were only Muslims, but people came and people joined, and now about half frequent participants are non-Muslims. So we are always open for everyone, and we are always happy to see everyone who comes with peace, who really comes with peace, and wants to cooperate and do something good together. Please welcome.
Yes, thank you very much for talking to us.
You're welcome.
Today in the studio at Tetiana Yevloieva, a Muslim activist who has worked with IDPs, orphans, did interfaith work, etc. Thank you very much for watching.